Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the first round of the FIDE Candidates Tournament being held here in Toronto, Canada. Now, this event is very prestigious because the winner of this event will qualify to play a World Championship match against the current title holder, Ding Liren from China. Now, as in previous editions, which I played in 2016 and 2022, I'm once again paired against my countryman, Fabiano Caruana, in the first round, so as to avoid a situation where we might be paired at the end of the tournament and perhaps there could be some collusion, which would affect the outcome of the event. So, playing against Fabiano with the black piece in the first game, just like in 2022 in Madrid, a game that I lost, and I'm hoping to do a little bit better this time around. So, in this game, playing with the black pieces, Fabiano opens with the move e4, and after the move e4 here, I now play the move c5, essaying the classic Sicilian defense. We got knight to f3, d6, d4, takes, knight f6, knight c3, and now I play the surprising move pawn to e5. Now, many moons ago, I believe it was in either 1998 or 1999, I did a training session with the famous six-time American champion Walter Brown. We were basically studying the Nightor because he's one of the best players outside of the Soviet Union to know the system. And he asked me a funny question, which was, why does black play a6 here? And one of the biggest reasons, because black would love to push the pawn to e5 here, but if you do it right away like in the game, now white has this option to throw in this check because the pawn on a6 does not stop the bishop coming to the square. So this idea with e5 is considered a little bit dubious because of bishop b5, but in this new modern age of chess with such strong computer programs, they have shown that pretty much any opening is playable. So after bishop b5, I play knight bd7, Fabiano goes knight to f5, and now I play this move a6. Now already here, Fabiano was obviously quite surprised by my opening because according to classic theory, this is considered dubious. And why would anybody in their right mind want to play something dubious in the opening in such an important tournament with everything on the line? Because if you lose, you might ruin your chances at winning the tournament. Now, for a player like myself who focuses on content creation for you guys, the fans out there, I am here to have fun. I want to play exciting chess. I definitely want to play something which isn't super boring. So this is sort of a calculated risk, gambling a little bit that perhaps Fabiano will not be ready for the system, and in fact, he wasn't. Now, that isn't to say this is great or Fabiano is not a player who could figure this out over the board, but he's going to have to spend a lot of time, and with no increment, players having 2 hours but gaining no time for every move, it makes the task a little bit more difficult. So, Fabiano goes bishop a4, I play b5, bishop b3, knight to c5 here, attacking pawn on e4, threatening to capture the bishop on b3 as well, and potentially targeting the knight on f5. Now, I do apologize for my arrows. I'm using a mouse which I haven't used in a couple of years. I'm using this Pro Ultralight mouse here, which you can see actually also quite famous because it has the TSM logo back from my time in that org. So I apologize if some of the arrows aren't great, but it's not the super light mouse that I'm using. Hashtag not an ad. So, after knight c5, Fabiano plays bishop g5, I take the knight on f5, he takes back, I play bishop e7, Fabiano trades the bishop on f5, and now he decides to castle. Here I decide to play this move e4. Now, it's a very committal move. I could have decided to castle followed by e4 on the next turn, or played e4 right away. Now, when all is said and done, I decided to play e4 because it's a very forcing move. I open up this nice long diagonal for my dark square b, and here there's going to be a big liquidation. For example, if white were to move the knight here, I take the pawn on b2, and after rook b1, bishop f6, I'm simply up a pawn in the center of the board. If white were to play a move like rook to b1, intending to move the knight, now I can swap the bishop for the knight and castle here, and this bastion on c5, the knight protected by the pawn on d6, is very well placed. Computer says it's still equal, but black is for choice. So what that means here is that after e4, Fabiano has to sack the knight temporarily by taking the pawn. I take the knight, goes rook e1, pinning the tail on the donkey as I can no longer move the knight from e4. Here I decide to castle, Fabiano captures, I take on b2, we get rook b1, bishop to f6, and now Fabiano plays queen d5. Now, as you can tell, at this point in the game, I'm already up nearly 40 minutes on the clock with no time being added before move 40. So the opening has worked out pretty well. I'm already at 40 minutes. We're on move number 18, and this is a very simplified position. That being said, there are some serious risks here, which is that white's light square b on this diagonal aiming towards the pawn and the king is a little bit better than my sniper on f6, which is staring at absolutely nothing on the super long diagonal. Sorry for the wrong arrow, of course, but I think you guys get the point of what I'm saying. So after queen to d5, I play the move rook to c8, Fabiano goes queen b7, and this is the move that really sort of took me out of my comfort zone. I started kind of tilting in a sense where I spent a lot of time before playing my next move. Now, as you can see, I have 1 hour and 41 minutes here, and after rook c5, I have 1 hour and 6 minutes, which by basic math means that I used 35 long minutes there. Now, when I played rook c8, I wasn't sure if it was the best move. I believe that queen c7 as well as rook to b8 are both also alternatives, but rook c8 felt like the right move. So we get queen b7, and now I play this move rook c5. Now, this move is probably a mistake. I think that I should have played this move d5 here, attacking the rook. If white were to swap everything off on d5, I win the pawn on c2, and this endgame should be a draw primarily due to the opposite color bishops. Now, what I was concerned about after d5 was this move rook to e2, which protects the pawn on c2. Say I go h6, for example. White can now trade everything on d5, and the pawn on c2 is protected by the rook on e2. So after d5, rook to e2, I spent a lot of time trying to work this out of the board, but I simply wasn't happy. If I played queen d6 here, I was worried about rook to d1. And after rook b8, takes. Computer thinks that after rook to d8, this is simply an easy draw, but over the board, it's very hard to know whether this position is an easy draw. For example, takes, rook d8, bishop b3, and king f8, where the opposite color bishops are in play, but white in the long term always has one extra pawn here on f5, and computer says, no sweat off your back, it's an easy draw, but in human games, you're simply never quite sure whether that's the case. So, that's why I played this move rook c5 instead. Fabiano captures the pawn, I capture his pawn, and now he plays rook to d1, trying to go after this weak pawn on d6. Here I play d5, Fabiano goes rook b4, and now I play this move bishop c3. Now this move bishop c3 was an audible over the board. When I was considering all the way back here whether or not to play rook c5, I had already seen this position that occurred in the game with the rook on b4, and initially I was going to go queen e7, but after queen takes b5, if I play this move bishop c3, I was very worried, first of all, about rook to a4, bishop e1, and f4 here, where I wasn't sure what I was doing. Computer, of course, laughs in my face and says, after the very obvious move bishop d2, black is completely fine. Or, for example, if white were to play queen to d3 here, simply rook takes f2, and after queen takes c3, queen to e2, bishop takes d5, takes, and the computer thinks it is a draw. Now, Fabiano, during our post-mortem, did mention a line here, which is after queen to e2, rook to h4 here, but after takes, and king takes, king h1, I can sack the rook, and after takes, king g2, computer thinks that after rook to e8, black is actually much better, if not outright winning here. So, queen to e7 would have actually worked out, but I simply wasn't sure. I decided to audible at the board because at the end of the day, you guys, we're playing this tournament for content. So I played bishop to c3 instead, and now Fabiano, of course, captures the pawn on b5, and now I sack the rook with rook takes f2 because content is king. So after rook takes f2, Fabiano takes the pawn on d5. He does not capture the free rooks. If he were to capture, I have queen to h4, checking the king. White can probably force a draw by repetition, I think, after king g1, bishop d4, king h1, bishop e5, and h3. But after queen g3, king g1, I simply can check. He goes back, and we get a repetition with the king going back to the same squares. If he goes this way, I check here. And if you go to d2 in this position, now there's, or wait, maybe there's a force mate here with bishop d4. At any rate, I know that I can never lose the game. So, after rook takes f2, Fabiano does not capture rook. Now, one thing that I noticed is that when I played this move bishop c3, I did notice Fabiano's reaction is that he sort of started getting big eyes and looking down at the board because he thought it was simply a blunder, which means that he had not seen the move rook takes f2. And that actually gave me quite a bit of confidence during the game because if a player of Fabiano's caliber can miss moves like this or not see a tactic, he's definitely going to be feeling a little bit shaky too because normally at our level, we do not miss ideas at all. There might be a surprise, someone might play a move, but you normally don't miss these obvious tactical ideas during a game. Nonetheless, after rook takes d5, I play queen h4, Fabiano goes queen to d3, and now I play this move rook to f6. Now you might be thinking, uh-oh, I just hung a bishop. But if white were to take the bishop, this walks into the classic ice skater checkmate with check, king h1, check, takes, and of course, this is a back rank checkmate with the king simply stuck in the corner. So after rook to f6, Fabiano goes g3, attacking the queen on h4. I swing it over to b4 to guard the bishop on c3, and now we get king g2. Here I play the move bishop b2, and this is a move that I felt was a little bit wrong, but I was trying to really keep pressure on Fabiano's clock here. He's down to 12 minutes, no increment, and I wanted to keep moving quickly. Probably in retrospect here, I should have played a move like queen g4, And if white were to take on c3, after check, king g1, and rook f2, game will probably end in a draw after rook d2, check here, takes, check, check, and I will check ad infinitum, and the game will end in a draw. Also, if white plays h3 here, now I can retreat to c8 with the queen, guarding the bishop once again. And now my bishop is free to come back to b4 and c5, maybe b2, maybe a5 down the road. But this bishop on c3 is very, very secure. Whereas in the game, when I play this move bishop b2, now the bishop is on the loose, and it's not completely secure anywhere. I'd love to put it back on f6, but my rook on f6 is in the way. Here, Fabi plays rook f5, and I think this move is a mistake. Fabiano also called it a lazy move in our post-mortem after the game ended, and I kind of agree with him. I was actually very worried about this move rook to b1 here, because if I move the bishop to, say, c3, for example, there's rook to h5, threatening the checkmate on h7 with the queen and the rook, and after g6, now there's the classic fossil here with bishop takes f7, checking the king on g8, I snap the bishop, but then he snaps my queen on b4, and after takes, let's just say rook to d5 here. White has a queen for a rook and a bishop, and white should win the game in short order. Fortunately, Fabiano plays rook f5. I go g6. We swap the rooks here, and now I've also created a square for my king so that there are no back rank checkmates anymore. On top of that, white's pawns here, the 2 pawns he has, are kind of split, so it's not easy to push them up the board. For example, say we could get a position like this just to illustrate it. Now suddenly white's pawns are going up the board very quickly since they are connected and right next to each other. But in this position, with the pawns being split, this always gives me pretty good practical drawing chances, and the white king here is a little bit open. It's not easy to defend the king other than with the queen. So we get queen to f3, I go queen to e7 here. Very important move, by the way, because if I move my king up to guard the bishop, now there's rook to d7, and suddenly white has the kebab on the 7th rank, and white will start pushing both the a and the c pawns here, and white is very close to winning the game. So I go queen to e7, important move. I guard the bishop, but I also stop the rook from infiltrating on the 7th rank. Fabiano plays a4, I go king g7, and now he plays another move that simply throws away any real advantage, which is pawn to a5. Now, Fabiano is getting a little bit low on time here. I think he was definitely a little bit shaky. It's the first round of the turn. We're all kind of winding our way into the event, and this move just is a blunder. What Fabiano probably should have played was a move like bishop to d5, or maybe even rook to d5 here, trying to push the pawn forward, because after a5, I have the very nice move, rook to a8, sacrificing my second rook in the game, and Fabiano is unable to take it, because if queen takes rook, I check, and the game simply ends in a draw by repetition, with the king and the queen yo-yoing back and forth. So, after rook a8, Fabiano plays rook d5, but now I play rook to a7. And the big issue for white here is this pawn is very, very weak on a5. White can't easily guard it. Say you go bishop c4, trying to push the pawn forward. I have queen c7, attacking both the bishop and the pawn at the same time. And if I win the pawn on a5, the game should always end in a draw. So Fabiano goes rook b5. I play queen to d8, trying to win this pawn here. Unfortunately for Fabiano, he can't go queen to c3, guarding the pawn, because that would be the classic Botez gambit, where I take the queen for free. Additionally, if you push the pawn forward, I can simply capture it as well. So his pawn on a5 is very weak, and white doesn't really have a good way to defend the pawn. So Fabiano plays rook d5, I go queen c7, he plays h4 here, and now I decide to take the pawn on a5. Now, this was not the only way to play the game, but I felt that in this endgame that occurs after the trade in queen b7 here, queen d8, takes, and king h6, I'm down a pawn. White has the extra pawn on c2 here, but with opposite color bishops on the board, I really should never be in all that much danger. Fabiano goes king h3, I play queen to e7, Of course, if Fabiano trades the queens, this is a simple draw with the opposite colored bishops. Like most endgames with opposite colored bishops, it's going to be a draw unless there's some big imbalance. Fabiano goes queen c4, and now I play the move queen to e3, and here I offer Fabiano a draw as we had made 40 moves as per the requirements, but secondly, Fabiano doesn't really have a good way to continue the game without trading the queens off the board. If white plays queen f7 here, white's actually in a little bit of trouble, because after bishop to e5, I attack the pawn on g3 here. After queen f8, king to h5, suddenly white has no way to guard this pawn on g3, and white's actually in a lot of trouble. Fabiano could, of course, play a move like queen to f4, for example, but after takes, let's just say king g7, c4, and bishop e7. So we get some position like this with bishop c2 and h5. White cannot push the c pawn forward here as the bishop covers the square. Bishop also pressures the pawn on h4. And I'm simply just going to sit forever on g7 and h6. And with no way to make progress here, the game will end in a draw. if Fabiano were to play, let's just say, a move like, I don't know, queen to d5, another idea after bishop to e5, let's just say queen g2, for example, I can simply sit and wait here with bishop d6, bishop e5 forever. And again, white really has no way to make progress, so the game should be a draw. So, therefore, after queen to e3, Fabiano agrees to my draw offer. We draw this first game. It ends with a peaceful result, which, of course, is generally very good for me. Playing with the black piece in the first round against the player that people say is the favorite to win the tournament is always good. But I hope that you guys enjoy the game. I try to play something different, be creative, and have some fun. And once again, I hope you guys enjoyed this recap from the first round here in the FIDE Candidates Tournament. Of course, I will be doing recaps after every single game that I play in the event. Tomorrow will be round 2. I'll be playing with the white piece against Vidit Santosh Gujarati from India. With all the games being drawn in the first round, so far it's setting up to be a very tight event, but 13 more rounds to go, and we take it one game at a time. So, on that note, I hope you guys enjoyed this recap. If you've not already subscribed to my channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back tomorrow with another recap from the second round. See you guys. Bye.